And we're go time. Everybody, welcome to the podcast. This is the Impact Innovators podcast, where we talk to founders about the stories that they have that's worth sharing. It's a podcast with real stories, real founders, and we come together to inspire you with real, actionable ideas. Mike is a marketing guy who uses all of his skills to help you scale up your business and grow it. And he's also a best-selling author on Amazon, which we're going to get into in a little bit. So, Mike, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Shane.
So I think we're going to start off with just tell us a little bit about, as a kid, did you grow up dreaming about being the marketing medic guy?
I did. I had no goals growing up. I was just living it day by day, playing street hockey with my buddies and living the life in Hamilton.
The life in Hamilton.
Oh, I had a great group of friends. It was me and Randy and Tim and then Darren. And Darren had an older brother named Sean, and Sean had his group of friends. My group of friends just always played sports against Sean's group of friends. In the winter, we'd play hockey against each other. In the summer, we'd play baseball and football against each other. And yeah, it was just a great life, just hanging out with my buds.
Nice.
That's what it used to be
good.
anyway.
So what did you dream about doing? What was your dream?
I always liked the outdoors. Like in high school, I was part of the outdoor ed program there, and we went camping and winter camping. And that's just something I wanted to do. So in the later years of high school, my dream was to be a wolf biologist. Yes.
Interesting. And so why wolf biologist specifically?
Oh, because I liked wolves.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
So it wasn't really the best career choice.
All right. So somehow along the way, you came from being a Canadian boy playing hockey in the streets with your buddies and became a medic, an emergency medic on a helicopter. How did you go through all of this and then eventually become the marketing medic? And what exactly does marketing medic mean?
There's actually a cool story for me how I became a medic. So I was going to the University of Guelph, studying wildlife biology. I had just finished my microbiology exam. And if anybody's taken microbiology, you just go from microscope to microscope and you look at a red dot and you have to answer like what stage of pubescence that dot is in. And after that exam, I'm like, I hate this. I hate this so much.
Sounds like a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah. So I was living in Guelph, but I went home to my parents' place for the weekend. They weren't around, so I got the house to myself. And I was just going to sit downstairs and watch TV. And what was on the TV was Baywatch with the Hoff, with Pamela Anderson running on a beach.
You're dating yourself.
Yeah. I watched this pilot episode of Baywatch. I'm like, lifeguard. Yes. Because I was a lifeguard at the time working in a pool. I'm like, I want to be a lifeguard. But I'm in Canada and we don't have oceans and beaches. Actually, we do have Pamela Anderson in Canada, but we don't have the other stuff, right?
Yeah. She went to Hollywood.
And so I said, okay, realistically, I don't want to be a swimming pool lifeguard in a building. I want to be like a beach lifeguard, but that's not going to happen in Canada. So what is similar to that? I was like an ambulance person is like a lifeguard. I wonder what's involved with that. So the next day I went to the library, I went to the Careers Center, and I found a bunch of colleges that were offering the program. And on Monday, I called Niagara College and I said, hey, I want to join your program. And the receptionist who answered said, oh, I'm sorry, but applications were due like 6 weeks ago. And we're having our last interview day tomorrow. So maybe next round. So you know what? Why don't you just come tomorrow? And you can fill out the application then and go through the process. And so I just finished my third year of biology in university. And so the testing that we had for ambulance college, we had to do a biology test, which was basically identifying how the knee was different than the elbow. It was the most basic of biology. And then we had to do a 1 mile run test. And I was a triathlete at the time. So I completely crushed everybody in both the academics and the fitness. And then when it came time for the interview, I had 3 years of life experience, which most of the other candidates didn't have because they were applying right out of high school. So I basically got accepted into the program. And within a 48-hour period, I decided not to be a wildlife biologist, but to be a paramedic instead. I made a complete 180-degree career change on a whim. And that's how I became a medic to start.
Very cool. And you were not just a medic, but you were a special kind of medic, weren't you?
Yeah, and my first job was in Hamilton, and they had a pilot program for true paramedics. Ambulance attendants were just glorified taxi drivers. We could put oxygen on people, we could set a splint and put them on the stretcher and drive them to the hospital. But Hamilton had a pilot program for true paramedics that started IVs and gave drugs and intubated and did all this cool stuff. So I said, you know what? I'm going to apply to a bunch of paramedic programs in the United States, which I did. And they said, you can do that if you want, but we're not going to recognize your qualifications if you ever try to come back. And so I applied to a bunch of schools that had skiing very close. So I applied to Northern California and Washington and Colorado, and I got accepted into the Colorado Swedish Medical Center program and did my true paramedic training there. And then I got recruited from there by the Copper Mountain Fire Department to be their medical officer. And so I went right out of school to be a firefighter paramedic. And at Copper Mountain, which is a ski resort. After a few years, I just was missing the woods of Canada. I was missing Canada, so I decided to come home. And while I was gone, paramedics exploded in Ontario. They started training people and everything. I somehow found my way into Sunnybrook Hospital in Toronto. I met a woman there, and she was overseeing a brand new helicopter program that was launching in Ontario. Because of my relationship with her, I ended up getting hired as the chief paramedic for Canadian Helicopters to launch 4 helicopter bases across the province. I opened bases in London, Ottawa, Kenora, and Moosonee. Once those 4 bases were opened, I managed the Ottawa base.
Sounds like some pretty exciting stuff.
Sadly, the memories are more the bad ones.
Oh.
It's been a few years. And yeah, I have a little bit of PTSD going on. It's more like the ones that you couldn't save that stick with you more than the ones you did save. Actually, one of my best memories is it was a nothing call. I don't even know what was wrong with the woman. But what I remember is getting a card in the mail at the base afterwards, like with the written thank you for helping her, because that never happened.
Yeah, really. That's
it was
really
just cool
nice.
in that one instance. And maybe this is probably where the empathy comes in. It was really cool to be recognized. And again, it wasn't, I took her to the hospital and I was just nice to her. And so that meant a lot to me.
Very cool. So tell us a little story. What is it about going through that process that has led you to where you are now as the marketing medic?
Yeah, I think one of the things that set me apart from a lot of the other medics was I strongly believe in the relationship you have with the people that you're serving.
Yeah.
So one of my best examples for that, I was working with the Englewood Fire Department, and we responded to a call of a child with some sort of injury. We didn't know what it was. And so it was in the evening, we go to the house, we knock on the door, nobody answers, and we open the door and the father yells, "Come in, we're in the kitchen." And we get in the kitchen, we find a father with his 9-year-old girl, and they were putting venison, deer meat through a meat grinder.
Oh, I don't want to know that.
Yeah, you know what happened here. So he'd been doing this with his daughter for years, and they just got a new machine, and it was all great until it isn't, right? So what happened was the phone rang, and this is how we've all had experiences like this. As he turned to answer the phone, she stuck her arm in the meat grinder. What a meat grinder does is it grabs the meat and pulls in. He was able to unplug the machine and stop it in time, but her arm was in this meat grinder. So as a paramedic, we're trained exactly what to do. We assess the scene for any danger. So the meat grinder is not going to hurt us. The father's not going to hurt us. Then we assess the patient for her level of consciousness, for LOA. She knew we were there. Everything was good on that front. Then we assess her ABCs, her airway, breathing, circulation, right? And then that was all good. But then what we would do is we would start an IV, administer morphine for the pain, put on the stretcher, take her to the hospital. That is what we do by the book, right? Standard operating procedure. The damage that had been done to her hand was done. There was nothing we could do to change it. Nothing anybody could do to change what had been done. So I could have followed the SOPs by the book and got to the hospital as soon as possible, or I could take time to build a rapport with her. Because can you imagine, like, we're firefighters. Like, I'm 6'2", my partners are all over 6 feet tall. We are big, burly, manly men, right? Coming in and attacking this little girl. So she's afraid because her arm's in this machine, and she's afraid because now she's got these 3 big guys on her.
Probably smart.
Right? So I started by just building a rapport with her and just telling her dad jokes and just getting her mind off her. I actually, sometimes with kids, I would get another needle and I would jab myself with the needle first and say, yeah, I felt that. There's a prick, but it doesn't hurt that bad. So I showed her that. And then I slowly started the IV for her. And what was so cool, I remember we had to get her into the surgery and her dad had to go into surgery as well because her dad had to dismantle the machine and the surgeons didn't know how to do that. And then once the machine was off her arm, the surgeons would have to go into work to control whatever bleeding there was.
Yeah.
But by the time we got to the hospital, she wasn't screaming anymore. She wasn't crying anymore. And she was actually telling me stories about her dog and the games that she'd play with her dog before she'd go to school in the morning.
I love that.
And so
most people would not have done what you did there, where you helped her, you basically gave her empathy and helped talk her through the situation to calm her down.
Yeah, because the way the meat grinder works is it grinds, it doesn't really cut. So she wasn't bleeding anymore. Had she been actively bleeding, then life is more important than.
You got to go by the.
But she wasn't bleeding. And you know what? With the shock or whatever, like the pain wasn't really that bad either. And we've proved that by the fact that she wasn't crying by the time we got to the hospital. Like she was traumatized. It was a bad situation. But a big part of it was in her head, right? And so by getting into her head with her and helping her deal with it, one of the first things we did was we put a towel over the arm and over it so she couldn't see it anymore. But yeah, that's just one of my biggest and best stories of how empathy served the patient. I think more so than my medical training.
Yeah, interesting. So you mentioned too about just understanding the level of awareness, which is, I think, probably the foundation of how to be empathetic to somebody and understand their situation, which, as you mentioned, it's really key in the marketing world. So what do you think were the specific skills that you ported over to working with your clients to help them scale their business?
Yeah, Sunnybrook Hospital taught me about level of awareness in the paramedic world, and Eugene Schwartz taught me about level of awareness in the marketing world. And so in the marketing world, when we're talking about level of awareness, we're talking about how aware is your audience about their problem. Okay. So are they completely unaware of their problem? Do they know they have a problem, but they're not doing anything about it? Do they know they have a problem and they're looking for different solutions? Or have they chosen a solution? And they're like, yeah, that's what I want to do. Or have they even at the highest level, are they most aware and said, yes, I want Shane Johnson's arthritic cream 501, right? And so it's super important when you're approaching your audience to understand their level of awareness. Because Shane, like I just created some arthritis cream 501 for you. If you were to offer the majority of the population 50% discount on your cream, very few people would take you up on that because they don't know who you are. They don't know what makes your cream different. And they might not even know that the pain that they have in their elbow because they're 24 years old is arthritis, right? And so this is what so many businesses do wrong. They think they can just put a sale price out there and they're going to get all these buys coming in. But what you need to do first is you need to educate your audience. You need to understand with empathy where they are on this pyramid. So if they are problem aware, like a 24-year-old with joint pain thinking arthritis, if you target 24-year-olds with joint pain, you could educate them what arthritis actually is and how by definition that elbow pain is arthritis and how with the special copper molecule that you have in your cream, you can help alleviate that pain. But you have to work them up through the process of understanding before you're going to make the sale.
Gotcha. So would it be fair to say that because you have this level of empathy, you've been there before and you've lived the story that they're living, that you're describing their problem to them in a way that they've never even been able to describe it or enunciate it themselves, and what the potential solutions are to help solve it. So because of that, you're building a trust, I guess.
That's right.
Yeah. Trust in marketing is key.
Trust in marketing is on a spiral decline. Today is the worst time in history to market to people, and it's only going to get worse tomorrow.
Yeah. A lot of marketers, we tend to ruin everything.
We do.
We find something that's working and we just overdo it.
Like something I'm seeing in my Facebook feeds right now is, because I'm over 50, is all these calisthenics for men over 50 and how you could lose like 20 pounds in 2 weeks with these calisthenics.
Yeah.
I think
it's got an old guy doing the exercise that's ripped, right?
Yeah, but we all know that weight loss doesn't come from the gym. It comes from the fork, making these promises that if I do these calisthenics for 2 weeks, I'm going to lose all this weight. And that's not...
And I can eat whatever I want then.
Yeah. And I'm not saying calisthenics are bad, but it's not being marketed truthfully, right? And so every time we're lied to, we just become more and more distrustful about everything.
So we're touching on the borders of some of the things that you teach in this book that you became a bestseller on Amazon for, called Empathic Marketing. Do you have some steps or something, a quick action kind of thing that you could share with our listeners to help them figure out how they could do some better marketing or how they can choose a better marketer to help them with their businesses?
Two things. The first is capturing the heart, and the second is convincing the mind. Okay. So by capturing the heart, you want to make a big, bold promise, but one that you can deliver on. And then because everybody's making these big, bold, audacious promises, lose 20 pounds in 14 days with calisthenics, that captures my heart. If I believed that I can lose 20 pounds in 14 days with calisthenics, I would do it. But they're not backing it up by convincing my mind. Okay? And so this is where you have to have what I call your big differentiator, what Eugene Schwartz refers to as your unique mechanism. This is something that differentiates you from your competition. Okay. So if this calisthenics thing addressed my, let's call it false limiting belief for how weight loss or gain is through your diet, if they could say, because of these calisthenics, we activate this hard to activate hormone in your body that stops the fat building from occurring. Oh, okay. Because I always thought it was from your food. But if this special calisthenics activates this hormone, that makes sense. So maybe calisthenics can help me lose weight. But you have to have that big differentiator to convince the mind. And if you have some scientific background, if you have some stats to back it up, some testimonials, then those will go a long way as well.
What advice would you give to, let's say you've got a business that's just standard, boring, I'm not going to say boring, just normal stuff. Let's say you're a plumber or you're a contractor or, I don't know, you're a lawyer. How do these people define what is unique to the way that they deliver the results to their customers?
This is a 12-hour workshop.
What if they don't have 12 hours?
Yeah, coming up with that big differentiator, that I think is one of the most crucial things for a business to do.
Mm-hmm.
And there's actually two different types of big differentiators that you can have. The first is to identify something that everybody else in your industry is doing, but nobody is talking about. Okay. So one of the biggest examples from that is Claude Hopkins when he went to Schlitz Brewery. They hired Claude, he's this famous copywriter, to help them with their marketing. And he toured through the brewery and he was amazed by all the steps they were taking to make sure that their beer was so pure. Like it was brewed in a special chamber where the air was filtered twice. The bottles were pasteurized like 7 times. Like all this effort was done to make sure it was super pure. And so when they finished the tour, Claude asked the brewmaster there, he's like, why aren't you guys talking about this? It's amazing. This is the way we all do it. If you don't do it this way, you're going to have bad beer. I didn't know this. Other people don't know this. So if we start talking about the purity of your beer and this 2-step air filtration, this 7-step pasteurization, that's going to set you apart from everybody else. So that's something that a business can look at. It's something that makes your business work, but nobody else is talking about. And then
It's interesting you bring up the story about Claude C. Hopkins because a number of years ago, I had a home recreational business, pools, hot tubs, pool tables. And in the wintertime, we had to sell pool tables, and sometimes it was just to pay the rent because we didn't really sell that many. But anyway, I took a trip to where they made these pool tables down in Tucson, Arizona, close to the Mexican border. And I got a chance to tour where they made them. And there's these craftsmen that have been working on these pool tables for more than 30 years. And so I filmed the whole process, which to the average person, or especially to the people that worked there, seemed like it's just passé. It's boring. It's just what they do. And they had this little emblem that they stamped into the pool tables and had the image of a Spanish mission church, which was right on the border. So I got to tour that little Spanish mission. And I said, what's so special about it? And they said, there's 2 turrets that go up. One of them, if you notice, it doesn't have a bell in it. It's unfinished. And they said, no, it's been like that since the 1700s when they first built it. And the reason for that is because they consider this a work of art. And with any work of art, it's always changing and forming new art. And when you walked into this Spanish mission, it looked like Michelangelo had painted in there. It was just gorgeous. I wrote this whole marketing story and put some pictures out, and I bought all the coffee table books they had with the Spanish mission, and I told everyone this story rather than tell them about the features of the pool table. And the sales went crazy because people loved that story, and it gave them a story to tell other people that came over to play on their pool table. So yeah, the power of just leveling up with that kind of a story. A lot of us working in our businesses, we think it's just the normal stuff. It's how we do what we do. But to the people that you're serving, they don't know that story. So just telling your story sometimes is a really cool differentiating factor, right?
And that's the crux of empathy right there. Like we're always looking at our business. We're always looking at the world through our lens. And if something mundane that we do day after day, then that we forget that the outside isn't seeing it the same way. And so this is one of the hardest things for business when you're coming up with that big differentiator is to step outside of your life, look at your business from the inside and try to say, oh, you know, that's interesting to an outsider, but it's not to an insider.
So let's peel back the layers of this onion a little. Let's get a little deeper on this empathy thing. Simon Sinek, in his famous TED Talk, said, the mind can be convinced, but the heart must be won. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And what you do simply proves what you believe. So Mike, why do you do what you do? What's your big why? Where did you get to this whole empathic marketing that the marketing medic espouses.
Wow.
It's the empathy.
I think we just all have passions. And for some reason, I just am passionate about seeing the world through other people's eyes. I love being objective. I don't think I judge. I like not being judgmental. And it's just fun for me to see the world through other people's eyes and try to imagine what they're going through. One of the things that you and I talked about on a previous chat was how I've been riding motorcycles for 30 years. And I have yet, knock on wood, I've never had a close call even with getting in an accident. But that's because so many motorcycle riders are in the moment, right? They're leaning into the thing, they're watching their RPMs, and they're just like them and their bike. They forget there's an outside world. And so when I'm coming up to an intersection and I have a green light and I see a car stopped coming towards me in that left-hand turn lane, I'm thinking, what are they thinking? Or what are they seeing? Can they see me? Because there's so many motorcycle accidents happen because that oncoming car is going to turn left in front of you because you're a small motorcycle. They don't see you. And so that's just part of the way I live is I'm always seeing the world through the eyes of the people around me. So I see the world through that driver and I'm like, can he see me, right? Is the sun behind me? If the sun's behind me, or might be glaring into his eyes. So I'm always expecting the unexpected. And that's the way I live every day of my life. It's pretty much in everything I do.
Most people just live inside their own heads. They don't see outside of their cell phone and they're driving and they're only thinking about themselves. Whereas you have this tendency, like you're this kick-ass guy who helps people grow their business through your marketing and advertising. And you've written this book about how to get into the empathy level so that you can do it even better. And I think a lot of people don't really get to see that side of Mike because you're always in the business mode kind of thing.
Yeah.
I know I've talked to you in the past about you've got this real heart-connected, empathic connection to your dogs. You rescue dogs.
Yeah.
And I know there was maybe 2 or 3 years ago, you lost a dog. And I remember talking to you and you were very broken up about that.
Yeah.
Tell us about your dogs.
Shane's determined to be my shrink and try to figure me out here. But
there's something behind this.
And it's funny, if you really look at like a dog's nature, they are 100% unbridled empathy. Like they are on this world to serve us emotionally and physically or whatever way they can. Because when I'm like frustrated or angry or whatever, my dogs can sense that. And they are on me, like trying to give me hugs and trying to make me feel better. And I'm in a place where I'm like, just, and I'm getting angrier. And as I'm getting angrier because they're harassing me, they want to help me more. And so I think this is where I quite often, and now we're going down a dark path, but this is quite often where like abuse comes in towards animals or towards spouses or whatever, because you lash out at somebody trying to help you, right?
Yeah. You don't want to be seen as weak.
Yeah.
I guess.
And I'm human. And like I say, when I'm sitting in the thing and Fred's putting his face, I just want to punch him and get him away from me. But I'm like, wait a minute, why are you doing this? And he's doing this because he can feel my stress and he wants to help me through it. And once you can put yourself in somebody else's position and understand why they're doing something, it allows you to process it a lot better. You're trying to sell something to somebody, put yourself in their mind, and they don't trust you. So try to think, what are they seeing in me that makes me untrustworthy? And what can I say or do to prove that I am somebody they should invest in?
So do you think that it's not just dogs you have there? You got a lot of rescue dogs and they seem to rotate through the arc that you call your off-grid place there. But you've also got horses. Do you feel that your animals help ground you to that level of empathy?
I'm a dog guy. We got the horses. So we got the alpacas because it was an impulse. But no, I'm 100% a dog person. I love all animals. We have a pet fox not a pet fox, but a fox that comes by every evening and has his chicken dinner.
It's a wild fox, but
it's a wild fox that we feed.
Yeah.
Every night at 6 o'clock he comes, and it's funny. All the dogs, they know when the fox is being fed because they all wait on the deck and they all bark at the fox, and the fox just sits there and looks at them.
Okay, so next question. Mike, have you, during this whole process, you've changed careers a couple times, you've done a lot of different things. I feel like you've got an eclectic background, but you've taken skills and somehow ported those skills from each career, each business that you've had. And we talked a lot about some of the successes you've had, about a setback in your business or maybe even your life that it ported over to your business. And during that setback, was there anything maybe unexpectedly that you might have learned that helped you on the flip side?
Yeah, it's funny because I guess I'm an optimist in a lot of ways, so I don't really see setbacks as setbacks. I just see them as little bumps in the road, and I'm always confident.
Even while you're in them?
Yeah, I'm not saying I'm not stressed or whatever, but I know it's going to work out. But I think the biggest mistake I made, and I think a lot of us do this in business, is I got too comfortable in my business. So I was basically working for one client. And this is when I first started in the ClickFunnels world with Russell Brunson. And I'm getting going, I'm doing all this stuff. And I asked Russell, I'm like, what's my goal here? What's the end game? And it was funny. Russell said, you just want to serve one client. Just find that one client that you can serve that will take care of you. A few years ago, I got that one client and I was making 6 figures with him alone. And then I had my other business on the side. So it's doing really well. And I just got super comfortable. I was working with him. And the problem is that I did too good a job for him because he had a 5-year plan to retirement. And after 2.5 years, he's like, you know what, Mike, I'm just burnt out and I don't need to work anymore. So I think I'm going to call it. And he retired. And I was like, oh, didn't see that coming, but that's fine because I'm the marketing medic and I'm really good at what I do. And I can get a client to replace you overnight. And, you know, I could not because I was doing all of my social media stuff on his behalf. I wasn't doing anything on my behalf. Like when I found him, he actually found me because I was on stage at ClickFunnels. I was doing something with ClickFunnels on stage there. And he came up to me afterward and I turned him away at that point. I don't remember meeting him. He just told me that I knew I wanted to work with you, but you didn't want to work with me. And I turned him away. And so he hired somebody else and he worked with him for a couple of years. And then he contacted me out of the blue and said, hey, Mike, do you remember me? I was like, no. Anyway, but it's because he saw me at ClickFunnels and he wanted to work with me then. And I wouldn't work with him and he found somebody else. And then he kept seeing me in social media and he knew I was still in the game. So when he lost his previous media buyer, he contacted me because I was out there. And once I started working with him, I got lazy and complacent. I wasn't doing my own stuff anymore. And so it took me like 6-8 months of getting myself out there before I could start attracting the client base again. Something for all of us to remember is to always spend some portion of your day working on your businesses and not in it.
Yeah.
That's right.
You got to do your own stuff, not just the stuff for other people.
That's right.
Yeah, interesting. I have a lot of clients that kind of fall into that trap. They haven't produced any kind of level of content, and that level of content really allows you to tap into the blue ocean and show empathy for your audience, help them get a little closer to their desired end result, solve a couple of their issues. Maybe you don't get them all the way there, but you're essentially helping them, and that's building your trust foundation.
Exactly.
So here's another question for you. What's the riskiest thing that you've ever done as it relates to business? And did it pay off? Yeah. Sometimes we try things, and that's what being an entrepreneur, being a founder is all about. We need to try new things very quickly and test them to see which ones aren't working so we can get to the ones that are. So maybe tell us a story where something you took a risk on that maybe didn't work, and then the flip side, something that did work.
Okay, so that's really easy. This is insane what I did. As I mentioned, I was a helicopter paramedic, and as a firefighter, we all have side hustles. And so I have a master's degree in business management, and I've done work with Colorado Outward Bound. So when I came back from the United States to Canada, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do, my side hustle is going to be corporate team building. And this was in the late 1990s. The high-tech sector in Ottawa was booming. Ottawa, I don't know if it's known as Silicon Valley North, right? Because all the high-tech companies are in Ottawa. And they were just doing work on team building like crazy. And so I had a cottage with 50 acres and I'd create like an outdoor experiential leadership program out there. And I was attracting business and I was doing pretty well. And that's when I fell off a cliff. I had a cliff on that property. I fell 35 feet off a cliff. I broke my arm, my leg, and my back. And I said, you know what? As much as I love being a helicopter paramedic and saving lives, 2 things I didn't like. 1, I hated being the boss. I hated all the administration. Hated all the politics. And 2, I am not a night person. Like I have to go to bed. My body shuts down at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at the latest. So any calls that we got like at 2 a.m, I just ached all over. And it's not good for my health. So when I fell off the cliff, I said, you know what? I'm just not going to go back to being a paramedic. I'm going to go all in on this corporate team building because it's a sure thing. I sold my house, I sold my cottage, and I bought an abandoned sawmill, a 6,000 square foot building. It had 3 walls and a roof on 164 acres.
That's pretty risky.
Yeah, I'm going to turn this. And I didn't do any research. I just assumed that when I bought the property, I'd go to the bank and they'd give me this huge construction loan and I would build the place all up. And I'm a firefighter and a paramedic. I don't know how to build anything, but for some reason I figured I could do it. What ended up happening was the banks then educated me to the fact that we don't give construction loans for abandoned sawmills. It starts with
It's not a good investment.
no, it starts with an architect and a blueprint. That's the first. We'll give you $5,000 to get the blueprint, right?
Because, hey, that's their standard operating price.
You have to have the blueprint first. And then we will release another $10,000 for you to pour the foundation. And once the foundation's in, then we'll release another $20,000 for you to frame it. And then once that's inspected, then we'll release, right? That's how it's done. It's not an ad hoc. So no, you can't have any money for it. Oops. And so Nortel was one of the biggest employers in Ottawa. They were huge. I did automatic defibrillation training. And I was going into Nortel all the time as a defibrillator trainer. And they were telling me how much money they had and how much money they were spending on training. So I was doing the corporate team building with Nortel, and I'd done a couple of events with them. And I was driving to talk to their HR department to make me like the go-to source for team building within Nortel. And this is a true story, as I'm driving there, I hear on the radio, oh, Nortel Industries reports like record third quarter losses. They took some losses. No biggie. One of my dreams as a medic and hearing about Nortel was to buy their stock, because their stock just kept doubling and splitting and doubling and splitting. It was just exploding. I remember when the stock dropped to $100 a share. I'm like, oh, man, I wish I had money. And then it dropped to $10 a share. And then it dropped to $1 a share. And even at $1, I was like, they're going to bounce back. But within a few months, it was removed from the index. When Nortel was gone, Mitel was gone, JDS Uniphase was gone, they were all gone. All that business that I had planted my flag in had disappeared.
Dried up.
So that was quite a big failure. And I've got this property, which, so how did I build it, you say, if you couldn't get any loans? I could apply for credit cards. I had great credit. They would give me credit cards like nobody's business. So I had all the credit cards, all of maximum limit. And at one point, I was getting a cash advance from one credit card to pay off the other credit card and going to this thing.
Yeah.
And we were...
But did you have the place built?
No. So it was getting closer. And the first time I went to the bank, it needs to be 70% completed before we can give you a mortgage. Okay. I don't know what 70% is, like 70% of all the rooms. Yeah. But anyway, it didn't matter because they just said that. They didn't mean it. So I go back to the bank, hey, we're 70% done. Oh, did we say 70? We meant like 80. Like, well, what's 10% more? Okay, I'll go install a couple more doors. But anyway, the house had to be pretty much built. And it's funny because I was totally tapped. The entire house was pretty much done except for our ensuite bathroom. It was not touched at all. It was just a empty shell, no drywall, nothing. I was like, the house isn't 100%. Oh no. And anyway, when the guy came to inspect the place, everything looked good. And I was trying to steer him away from the bathroom door. He said, what's behind that door? Storage? I'm like, yeah, storage. Okay. So he didn't, but it was, we were 2 days from bankruptcy. 2 days. We would have lost everything. And then National Bank, props to National Bank, they stepped in and they gave us a mortgage to pay off all our credit cards and all our debt.
So how does that port over to the business world for you?
Yeah, so I completely failed at the team building stuff. I didn't know how to market, didn't know anything about marketing at the time. I was doing some cold calling, didn't know how to do anything. Anyways, but then once there was no businesses left to cold call, I was like, what are we going to do? And so I realized as a business, one of the things you can do best is identify a problem that is out there that's not being addressed and there's no solution, right? And so I saw that racing, Ottawa has a big race community, but there wasn't a lot of trail racing. And snowshoe racing didn't exist. Snowshoe racing did not exist in Canada.
Snowshoe racing?
Yeah. And so I said, you know what, I'm going to start a trail and snowshoe series here at the property that we call the Art. And I am literally the oldest trail and snowshoe racing organization in Canada. It didn't exist. Yeah, they say we're still the oldest. And the reason I knew snowshoe racing existed is because I snowshoe raced in Colorado. So it existed there, but it wasn't here. And so I was like, okay, yeah. So that started bringing money that we could do this. And then I looked back at what I did in high school. I was in the outdoor ed program. I'm like, oh, I know how to do outdoor ed. So we created an outdoor ed program here that I marketed to high school. So now we've actually got a group coming up in 2 weeks to do a 3-day camping trip here. So there was another stream of income. And then as we're building the place, my girlfriend, fiance, and I were going to get married. And her father said, I'm going to give you $10,000 for your wedding.
Nice wedding present.
So, so to spend on your wedding, right? And I said, could I buy drywall with that money? He goes, it's your money, however you wanted to spend on your wedding. So we were able to transform our property into a great place to have a wedding. So we spent that $10,000 on insulation and drywall and paint. And
so wait, you were going to get married.
Yeah.
And you were thinking about how can I create multiple streams of income off the property that we've already invested in.
Yep.
So you built your own wedding chapel to get married in?
Yeah. So Monique and I got married here and we didn't have plumbing. So we brought porta potties in. Yeah. Didn't have any grass yet. It was still hard under construction. The indoor venue had drywall up and it was painted and had a concrete floor. The ceiling was wide open with all the cobwebs and pipes and everything. But at the end of the wedding, everybody to the person said, this is the best wedding we've ever been to. It was just so much fun. Some people want a more rustic home party cottage feel wedding. So I was like,
cool, off grid in the forest.
Yeah.
You've got a nice little reception area there.
Yeah. I was working with the church before, then they changed the rules. So I'm not now, but I officiated weddings for.
You could officiate weddings.
For 8 or 10 years. I did it. And this again is going into the empathy and looking into, especially nowadays when it comes to weddings, right? Like weddings nowadays cost $30,000.
Crazy.
Right? Or do you want to spend $5,000 on the party and $25,000 towards your mortgage?
For not just themselves, but for everyone for that day that they're going to remember forever. So you've created, 2 or 3 different streams of income
main
just
ones.
from the property.
Yeah, the weddings, the outdoor ed camps, and the Mad Trapper Trail and Snowshoe series.
And you're still doing each of those even to this day while you're doing the marketing and advertising you're doing to help businesses scale up and doing your own thing and writing a book and hosting a podcast. How do you find time for all this? What's your daily routine to keep the creativity flowing and not burn out?
I think you just said it. It's if I was only doing one thing, I would get burned out. And my computer, my desk day stops at 2:00. Every day, right? And then I usually don't sit at the computer on Fridays at all. I'll check my emails because it's still a business day, but I won't do any real work. So I'm always doing something else. I'm building what we're calling the cliffside cabin. It's just this 12 by 12 little cabin on a cliff on our property. It's got a beautiful view and it's where our outdoor camping area is. And I was working hard at building that. And then I stopped because I need to build a greenhouse. So now I'm building a greenhouse.
It's growing season.
Yeah, exactly. So I was like, the greenhouse has to take priority because I don't need the income right now from the rental, but I do need to get the plants into the greenhouse. Like we've got, I wish I could show you. I've got all these lights. I don't know if I'm going pink at all, but I've got these grow lamps over here on my left. This is
growing vegetables, of course.
Yes. Yeah. This is something a lot of businesses experience, entrepreneurs especially, is the shiny object syndrome, right? So like the cabin was the shiny object. I was gung-ho on that. And I was building it. And it was like, it's about 80% finished, right? And then I dropped that to work on the greenhouse.
Oh, go ahead.
So it's just super important that you follow things through to the finish. I'm not saying I had to finish the cabin before the greenhouse, but I have committed myself. As soon as that greenhouse is done, I'm back to the cabin. You gotta, if you start something, there's a reason you started something, you need to see it through to the end.
The greenhouse, you're trying to put some good, wholesome, organic vegetables on your table to eat. Right. So that's important.
Yep.
But by the same token, you want to build another stream of income. So you've got some priorities there.
Yep.
So that's interesting. So you've got a lot of different balls you're juggling.
Forrest Gump.
Forrest Gump. Just let life take you through all the trials and tribulations and go to what you love. It seems to me like that's your story.
That's what
you're doing what you love to do with an ear towards trying to find the streams of income that will help you be able to sustain that way of life.
And that's the way I've always lived. Like I say, when I decided I wanted to be a paramedic, that was for business. That was going to be my career. But I wasn't going to go to Cleveland to go to paramedic school. I was going to go to Colorado. I was going to go to Northern California. I was going to go to Washington. I've always had really cool things, but there's always been like a means to the madness, right? I didn't go to Colorado to ski. I went to Colorado to get my paramedic training, and then I skied at the time. And sometimes you have to just have faith. And I'm not religious by any means, but like I say, when I left Hamilton, my paramedic job, and this is the funny thing, like before I left, I was part-time paramedic there, ambulance attendant, and they offered me a full-time position. And I turned it down. And nobody turns down full-time work if you're career-minded. But I said, no, I need the flexibility of my life right now. And then I said, and next fall, I'm going to go to Colorado to get my paramedic training. My boss said, if you do that, 1, you're fired. 2, you will never work as a paramedic with the United States paramedic training. Just so you know, you're wasting your time.
Yeah.
I said, okay.
Do what your heart wants to do.
Yeah. And it all worked out. And the same thing, buying this place and being 2 days away from losing it all. And the team building wasn't going to work. It just wasn't. But you find a way. You make it happen.
I resonate on such a great level because I did the same thing. I worked in the high-tech corporate world and I left early 2000, 2001. And everybody, my bosses, the senior vice president of the company that I worked for, my peers went, what are you, crazy? Because I was leaving the corporate world that I've been a part of for almost 20 years.
Yeah.
And I'm going to start this entrepreneurial venture, opening a store selling hot tubs and pool tables. And they're like, you're crazy.
Yeah.
Like I was doing consulting with the big six.
Yeah.
And it was just something that I really felt like my heart was pulling me towards. Like I wanted to do something better. I didn't want to retire and go, where did my life go?
Yeah.
So I really believe in that.
I don't remember it though.
Just go to where your heart tells you to go and just experience it. And it's okay if whatever you didn't work out, because in the end, you're going to find a new path, new doors open. I love that theme. Just thinking about something that's like a little counterintuitive to the normal advice that's out there, like marketing funnels, for instance. First of all, explain to everyone what I think most people know what a marketing funnel is, but there may be a few listeners that don't. So explain to everyone, what is a marketing funnel? What is its purpose? And do you have some counterintuitive advice? For instance, I know a lot of people say, just look at a marketing funnel that somebody else is doing and hack it.
Right.
So what's your advice for all that?
So there's 2 definitions of a marketing funnel. And what a true marketing funnel is from your first exposure to a potential client to the sale. Okay, so that first exposure might come through like a social media post, it might come through a paid ad, it might come through a referral, it might come from them seeing your YouTube video, their first exposure. And then how do you walk them through this? So how we started this call was like through their levels of problem awareness. How do you walk them through that till they ultimately buy? And that's what I see as a true funnel. And he brought funnels to the forefront. And what he sees as a funnel, and his definition is a website. Funnels are just a website, but they take people on a journey. So what he wants you to do is when somebody lands on your page, you give them something for free, like some lead magnet, a spreadsheet, a PDF, a video training, right? And then from there, you offer them something, a low price ticket for 5 cents. And then once they buy that, then they buy something for $29.95. Then you offer them something for $100. And then 5 minutes later, you've just sold them on a $10,000 product because that's all it takes.
Work
them up the pricing ladder, right? And so one of the fallacies is that somebody from a cold exposure is going to see your marketing funnel website, get your free thing, and then 5 minutes later buy your $10,000 upsell. That's not going to happen.
The chances are very slim.
Yeah. If somebody goes through a funnel like that, it's because they know it will work for Russell Brunson. Russell Brunson can make a $10,000 sale from his first opt-in, but that person who makes that $10,000 buy has been stalking Russell for the last 3 years. He's listened to all his podcasts. He's watched all his videos. He's seen all of his stuff, right? He's read his books. So when he finally clicks, then he's ready to make that journey.
And we haven't seen the tens of thousands of dollars he spent testing what's going to work there too, right?
Yeah.
You could be only one funnel away from your next $1 million.
It's the quickest way to share the funnel hacking story. Yeah. So one of the things that launched my career is I got hired by a small boot camp gym in California. They were circling the drain. They were on the brink of closure.
Yeah.
And they were 2 super fit dudes with like muscles bulging from everywhere. And they wanted to attract that 20-something crowd in California that wanted the beach spots because that's what they had. And so they were trying to hack Gold's Gym, LA Fitness, Orange Theory, like all the gyms that are attracting these 20-somethings. But when I went to this little hole-in-the-wall boot camp gym, I didn't see any 20-somethings there. It was all the 20-somethings parents that were there, like these 30 and 40-year-olds, 50-year-olds that were there that didn't have 6-packs. They didn't want 6-packs, right?
So they had a mismatch in their message to market match.
Exactly. So they're using all these stock photos, and you've seen the stock photos of the black and white photo of the girl covered in sweat with the six-pack abs and the crop top.
You could be just one way.
Yeah, and that might get a 20-something's attention. But when they visit the gym and they see a bunch of old, flabby people there, like 20-somethings don't go to a gym to get fit. They go to the gym to be seen in a place where people are getting fit. And so they can do all the Instagram selfies and stuff. And so when we stopped trying to hack Orange Theory and instead created a marketing message that attracted this 30, 40-something crowd, ultimately we got a 36-to-1 return on ad spend. And within a year, the two gym owners quit their full-time jobs to work the gym full-time. So a huge success story, right? I became a little bit famous for that. It's funny because while I was doing that, Alex Hormozy was doing something similar in the same county in Chino Hills. He was doing the big stadium sales pitch, right? And it's just funny because, like I say, Alex Hormozy was competing, and that turned out differently for both of us. So I suddenly thought I was like this god at building gyms. And so I was contracted by a gym in Chicago who said, hey, can you do for us what you did for them? So this Chicago boot camp gym wanted me to come out there and do the same thing for them as I did for the gym in California. And so what I did is I tried to hack my own funnel and do the same thing. All the offers and the copy and everything was exactly the same. And we spent hundreds of dollars on ads and got 0 sales. And I was like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, it works so well in California. Why isn't it working? Because the audience offer mismatch again. This boot camp gym was right in the heart of downtown Chicago. It was targeting executives. The executives were turned away the low price point offer that we had, right? So what we did is we quadrupled the price. And instead of promoting like community and social and like the family atmosphere, we promoted the intensity of the workouts in the short time period. So people could hit the gym right before work, or they could come at lunch, or right after work. They could get super dynamic workout in a very short amount of time for a lot of money. And once we did that, then we started getting the result. But
cool.
You can't
you spoke exactly to their needs rather than the needs of somebody else. So understanding your market rounds back to everything you've talked about here, building that level of empathy, understanding what they truly need, meeting them exactly where they are, and then helping them get a couple of steps further. And so with those busy executives, what do they want? They don't care about the price. They just want to pay for the result, and they want to get it quick.
Right.
And so you were able to take something that was working in one environment, make a pivot, and make it even better than it ever was.
Right.
And so you might not have even been able to get there had you not made that initial mistake. If you had come out with something average and it was getting average results, you might not have ever gotten to that level that you did there.
The thing is, empathic marketing didn't exist when I was doing, like, I was just doing it. I hadn't defined it.
Just part of your process.
It was just part of the process.
You're just doing it.
And so to your point, once I made that mistake in Chicago, wait a minute, that didn't work. What did I do that worked? Oh, wait a minute. I went to the gym. I saw the gym owners. I talked to them. I saw what they wanted. That's how you build a business, is by understanding your audience first.
Makes a lot of sense. All right, we're just rounding into the 1 hour for the podcast. So I want to finish with one question, and then we're going to round it back to some stuff for you. And it builds on what you were just talking about in the sense of some emerging technologies like AI. Everybody wants to talk about AI now. I've got an AI chatbot that acts as a CSR, and everybody wants to talk about that, even though the advertising and all the other stuff I do is probably going to get them move their ball a lot quicker and a lot better. But everybody loves this AI. What's your sense of where this all fits into what you're talking about here?
Because I'm on the more personal side of things, the more empathic side of things, I haven't really been using AI as, like I say, a customer service reps or as a bot, right? The way I used AI is to develop a better understanding of my audience. If you can go to a boot camp gym and talk to the customers, that's super easy and a quick route to find out what your audience wants.
Sure.
But most of the time, you're just doing online research. So you're going on to Amazon, you're reading book reviews in your topic, see what they're talking about, right? You're going to the different forums, you're going into the Facebook groups and just trying to understand them. But what's cool about AI is it can do all of that in a couple of seconds. So what I do is I created prompts that teach AI about my hero, Eugene Schwartz, and breakthrough advertising. And I said, from Eugene Schwartz's perspective and your understanding of levels of problem awareness, I'm serving let's see, who's a new client? Oh, so I'm actually working with a client now who does empathetic listening. So instead of counseling or coaching where people give you advice, these listeners just listen and let you talk through it. And they have questions and they help you help yourself. Anyway, I go into AI and I say, yeah, I'm working with a client who is offering an empathetic listening service based on Eugene Schwartz level of problem awareness. Where are they on this spectrum? And what are their short-term difficulties and desires? And what are their long-term dreads and dreams for this service? And then I have a bunch of different demographic things that I ask chat to come up with for me. And it does all that. So I've got all this like cold data that I can use, which is helpful. But then from there, I say, now using this data, a 1,500 word diary entry that's super emotional and visceral and gets down into their, deepest, darkest fears and desires. And then once it writes that out, oh my gosh, like you just understand your audience at a completely new level. So that's how I like to use it. I was working with a voice coach, and he's coached some of the biggest names on Broadway. And it was funny. I didn't tell him ChatGPT did this for me. I just sent him this diary entry. And he's like, I was literally teared up reading this person's, I don't know whose entry this is.
Amazing.
But and I don't know how you understand your audience. I've been doing this for 30 years and you tapped into things that I never even considered. I don't know how you did it. And I didn't tell him.
Interesting. So you're saying taking all of the learnings that you've learned over several years and you've written about in your book, Empathic Marketing, and you've shown the proof and results by working with your clients. You've taken all that stuff and kind of condensed it down into a little process that you can use within AI to be able to get you the results. So you're using that AI as a researcher to get you the information to help you build that empathy level even stronger,
right?
And in a much quicker way than you were ever able to in the past. Nice. All right. So we're going to finish this off with one last thing, and that is just a lot of our listeners are probably wondering, how can they get access to some of these tools and capabilities that you're talking about? Would getting your book help? Do you want to talk about some of that?
Yes, you can put the link in the show notes, but I think it's www.themarketingmedic.ca/podcast. And when you go to that page, I've got a couple of different offers for you. I've got a free plus shipping book offer. If you want to fast track things, you can actually speak to me, and I've got what I call a gap analysis offer. From this podcast, you'll get a 50% coupon code so that you can speak to me for 30 minutes. I can help you understand where you are right now and the steps you need to get to where you want to be.
So get the book. They can get the book at themarketingmedic.ca/podcast as well. Get the book. Okay, or go to Amazon and search for Empathic Marketing. Not empathetic, right? Empathic. It's a different word that Mike has trademarked. And they can get access to all these tools and processes that you use to develop your marketing and advertising to scale businesses. All right, Mike, thank you so much for being a part of this podcast. And by the way, guys, listen to Mike's podcast as well, which is called Because Business is Personal. Yeah. Very good. Lots of resources for you to get access to help you grow your businesses. Thank you very much, Mike, and say hello to all your dogs. I'm sure they're dying to go for a walk now.
They are.